Section 5 of Italy, France, Spain, and Portugal. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Sonia. The World Story, Volume 5, Italy, France, Spain, and Portugal. Edited by Eva March Tappan. Section 5. The Story of Gregory the Great, 1050 to 1085, by Louise Creighton. After the days of Charlemagne, the rulers of Germany called themselves also kings of Italy. They wished to hold the supreme power in the land, but the popes had no idea of allowing the church to be second to any sovereign. The result was contest after contest, and the struggle lasted for generations. The Editor. The man who did the most to maintain the power of the church was Hildebrand, the son of a poor Italian carpenter. As he seemed to be a clever boy, he was sent first to study in Rome and then to Cluny, a famous monastery in France. Many monks in those days lived idle lives, doing just as they pleased, but at Cluny they followed the rule of Saint Benedict, the holy man who had bidden his followers divide their time between prayer, study, and work with their hands. At Cluny, Hildebrand studied and learned to rule himself, but he did not wish to spend his life as a monk. He went back to Rome, and soon was active in the affairs of the church. He traveled to Germany and spent some time at the court of the emperor, and he became the chief adviser of 5 popes, one after the other. Reforms were terribly needed, and Hildebrand, who saw before him a vision of what the church might be, toiled with all his might to make it pure and strong. One of the chief abuses was the way in which high places in the church were bought and sold. Rich lords bought preferment for their sons, and in this way young boys often became abbots, bishops, and even archbishops. Such men were not likely to care much for the religious duties of their office, and their worldly and pleasure-seeking lives were a disgrace to the church. The Emperor Henry III, a great ruler who worked hard to bring about good government in church and state, was anxious to stop the shameful sale of offices in the church. He wished to choose himself the clergy who should be abbots and bishops in his lands, and the other rulers in Europe had the same desire. Hildebrand, on the other hand, wanted the clergy to elect their own rulers, and for this he struggled all his life with the emperor. The same struggle went on all over Europe for many years, and it cannot be said that in the end either side exactly won. But it became settled that the pope should be chosen not by the emperor or the people of Rome, but by the cardinals, great churchmen chosen by the pope himself from all the nations of Europe. They were mostly Italians, as the pope was generally an Italian, and they met in Rome at the death of a pope to choose his successor. Hildebrand wished to make the church not only strong but pure. He tried in every way to get the clergy to do their duty and lead holy lives, and to make the monks keep their rule and give themselves to prayer and study. He also insisted that the law forbidding the clergy to marry should be strictly kept. Many had disobeyed this law, and they were now bidden to put away their wives. For 25 years Hildebrand had been the real ruler of the church, but he was in no hurry to be pope himself. It was at the funeral of Pope Alexander II that men at last insisted that Hildebrand should be pope. The people of Rome rushed into the church shouting, "Let Hildebrand be pope!" In vain he tried to calm them, but crying, "St. Peter wills Hildebrand to be pope," they carried him off to another church, where the assembled cardinals and bishops elected him pope amidst the joy of all. He took the name of Gregory VII, and set to work to carry out the reforms he so much desired. His fame was spread throughout Europe. In every land his influence was felt, strengthening and purifying the church. But his work led him into bitter contests. The great Emperor Henry III was dead. His son Henry IV was not a wise ruler. He had difficulties with his own people, and he defied the Pope by appointing worthless men, his own favorites, to great places in the church. Gregory VII's reforms had roused many enemies against him, and at first the German princes took the emperor's side in the quarrel. An insolent decree was passed by the emperor and his council, declaring that Gregory VII should be no longer pope. When this decree was brought to Gregory in Rome, his indignant attendants would have slain the messenger had not he protected him. But his answer was a terrible one. He excommunicated the emperor and those who held with him, which means that he put them out of the church, so that no priest might minister to them or give them the sacraments. Henry IV had not many friends in Germany, and his subjects did not stand by him in this trouble. They even talked of electing another king. So he decided to submit to the Pope. In midwinter he crossed the Alps and proceeded to the castle of Canossa, a grim fortress which crowns a high peak of the Apennines, where Gregory VII was staying. The cold was bitter, and snow lay deep upon the ground. Henry IV lodged outside the castle walls and waited for 3 days, but the Pope would not see him. Then one morning, barefoot and clad in a coarse shirt, he climbed the steep path to the castle, and knocked as a humble penitent for admission at the door. All day he waited shivering in the snow. The next day and the day after he came again. Then at last Gregory was persuaded to name the conditions under which he would pardon him. He was admitted to the castle, and flung himself at the feet of the Pope, crying, "Spare me, Holy Father!" The peace made between the two was not lasting. It would have been wiser if Gregory had been less harsh. Henry IV could not forget or forgive his bitter humiliation. He went back to Germany and his struggle with his enemies, but as soon as he was strong enough, he led an army into Italy to attack the Pope. 3 times he besieged Rome, and at last forced his way into the city, but Gregory remained safe in the castle of St. Angelo, a fortress by the Tiber. Then the Pope's friends gathered a great army and drove out Henry, but in their triumph they did not spare the city, and the Pope saw it plundered and reduced to ruins by his deliverers. The last days of the great Pope were sad. Italy was distracted with wars, Rome was in ruins, its people furious with the Pope, who had to take refuge in the monastery of Monte Cassino in the Apennines. In the following year he died at Salerno. End of section 5. This recording is in the public domain.